Salutations, people. This is Spencer, and you're about to hear my Edge of View, whether you want to or not. Sorry that I wasn't able to get this video up yesterday like I thought I would. Time flies when you're working on prop commissions and holding down a job. But today's the day off for me, and here we are to talk about the Olympics, the 17 days every 4 years when the universe conspires to make me enjoy sports. Don't get me wrong, I care about exercise and health plenty. I myself am a frequent rock climber, and in a recent life devoid of paunch, a pretty damn good foil fencer. Not to mention a good short-distance sprinter in high school and a respectably good point guard for my school's basketball team. I support physical education classes and recess in schools, and I recognize the documented positive effects of exercise on brain development. But despite that, I've always hated competitive sports. Playing them, watching them, being a fan of them, I just can't do it. Maybe it's residual from my many early years of being absolutely awful at them and being forced to live as a nerd up through getting my high school diploma. But long story short, I'm just not a sports guy. Which is a shame, because sometimes I really do wish that I liked sports more. For example, after Great Britain's Olympic game opening ceremonies last night, it's hard to argue that such a mass-scale sporting event doesn't bring people together in peace and goodwill, far removed from the locker-shoving jockstraps that are so easily associated with sports. It was, no sarcasm, a beautiful ceremony with its own sense of whimsy and artfulness, and I thought it was very well done. That's not to say that getting to this point was easy for the Olympians or the event coordinators. Many reports of Britain's economic precariousness surrounding the Olympics have been pretty rampant, especially on many American and international news sites, and possibly most notably by presidential candidate Mitt Romney, who made negative comments about England's preparations just a day or so before the ceremonies began. But let's not focus on the naysayers and the bad-mouthers, and instead turn our attentions to the really interesting part of that night's ceremonies. And no, I'm not talking about the Queen and 007 parachuting in, though I'll admit that I may have experienced in that moment the same intense glee that every other Anglophile in existence felt. I'm also not talking about the spectacular torchlighting or the breathtaking fireworks display, though all of that is important enough, I guess. No, I'm talking about South Africa swooping in, determined to make the Olympics interesting to me again. Thank you, NBC, for giving me the backstory to remind me why I'm looking forward to the Olympic Games this year. In your 30-second blurb on South Africa, you raised not one, but two controversies concerning athletic involvement in the Games, both out of South Africa. Awesome. Okay, so let's start with Caster Semenya. Semenya is a female runner from South Africa who won the 800-meter dash at the 2009 World Championships in Athletics held in Berlin. So obviously this hasn't been an issue yet since the last Olympic Games were held in 2008. But here's the kicker. Semenya was called in for gender testing, which began at the end of 2009 after the WCAs, and was finally put to rest in 2010 when she was cleared as a female and was allowed to continue competing as such. Technically, the results of the test were never made public, and some people still have reservations, which strikes me as weird. Can't we infer that if she's competing as a woman, then her tests either came back female or the testing committee would have had at least some really legitimate reason to let her compete as a woman? This whole issue is dated anyway, and the fact that NBC would bring it up after 3 years, a little bit far off as far as I'm concerned, but it's something to think about, and it's a good refresher on who this athlete is. Like I said, Semenya won the 800 at the WCAs, and I think we're going to be seeing a good bit more of her in the Games. But get this, compared to this next guy, Semenya's story is pretty tame. So let's start with a question. What is required in order to run? I mean, just the very most basic things. Offhand, 3 things come to my head. A body, the ability to move and control your movement, and legs. Well, people, this Olympics, we are about to see one of these necessities crossed off that short list. Oscar Pistorius, known as the Blade Runner, is the first double amputee to not only qualify for the Olympics, but to be completely allowed to do so by the International Olympic Committee. They weren't contesting it because they didn't think he'd do well enough. They were contesting it because they thought his prosthetics, called Cheetah Flex Foot Carbon Fiber Transtibial Artificial Limbs, manufactured by the company Össur, would give him an unfair advantage. Think about this for a second. We live in a world where a man without legs is almost disqualified from running because they're afraid he's going to be too good. The amazing thing is that Pistorius has actually been disqualified from the Games before. This is the first year that the committee has allowed him to run. Now, props to Össur, that's got to be one hell of a prosthesis. I'm all in for the committee's new decision. They did rigorous testing on Pistorius and the cheetah prosthetic limbs and found that they didn't confer any significant advantage or disadvantage, so no problem there. Pistorius qualified fair and square with no handicap to his score, so that's not a problem either. I can't really think of a good reason, save unfair advantage or lack of fair qualification, that Pistorius should be denied his chance to shove a running blade-equipped foot way up the ass of the competition. And Pistorius has been denied his Olympic spot for years now, so I'm happy to see him walking alongside other huge Olympic names like Usain Bolt of Jamaica or Haile Gebrselassie of Ethiopia. I'm going to be rooting for the Blade Runner, if and just because for me, watching sports tends to be kind of dull, and watching a legless runner beat a bunch of world-class athletes would be one of the most incredible things I can ever imagine seeing. Now, I'll be talking a lot more about Pistorius if he actually starts winning things, because at that point I think the world is going to have to start talking a lot more about him too. I don't want to launch into a rant about how the world is so close to Ghost in the Shell reality, if it's not. So I'm going to save my breath and let you go. Agree with me about the allowance of Blade Runner in the Olympics? Disagree? Undecided? Do you agree with the committee decisions regarding Pistorius and Semenya? Or the fact that people are still arguing about both of these issues even after the respective committees have already made their decisions? Anything you want to say, I want to hear. Because this has been Spencer, and all of this is just my edge of view.